Hello and welcome to another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. I'm your host, Bob Azman. We're really glad to have you back. And especially as a follow up to our previous episode, our guest today, David Edelman, is joining me and he's going to talk about AI. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. But really harnessing AI. And what we talked about in our previous podcast was really focused on the technology around AI. And so this is a great follow-up podcast. David, we're really glad to have you here today, author of a new book that he'll talk about. David, if you would please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here. So I've been in the marketing area for over 30 years. Right now, I have kind of a portfolio lifestyle. So I do executive advisory work, working with larger companies on driving digital change, especially how to incorporate AI and how to raise the bar on what marketing and customer experience can do to contribute to their growth. I also have been teaching at the Harvard Business School, and I also am on the board of a VC company, Glasswing Ventures in Boston, that focuses only on AI. And so I get to see a lot of what's going on in the field, both from companies who they do invest in, companies they don't. That really helps keep me at the rock face of what's going on in AI.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, David. And David, I know you were in the corporate environment and consulting for a number of years as well, prior to your current portfolio, which I love the description of. Um, what kind of led you through this? What was your journey? How did you get into this? And especially as you lead up to now what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in marketing pretty much since business school. I went to the Harvard Business School, and when I was in there, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to focus on, but I loved the fact that marketing had the left and right brain, and it was focused on growth, on understanding the customer. I am a music guy. I play tenor saxophone. I've done a lot of theater, musical direction of theater when I was in college. And theater and the arts, and especially music, has this left and right brain. It's creativity, but there's structure, there's teamwork, but there's improvisation. And marketing just struck a chord with me. So after business school, I worked at the Boston Consulting Group, and I had asked to focus on marketing, and they honored that. And so I did a lot in the early days of where customer information and marketing were intersecting. I was at BCG for about 13 years. I rose to being a partner there. Then the internet was really taking off. I felt I needed to get closer to the rock face. And I joined a team that started what became Digitas, the interactive agency. At the time called it Interactive Agency, and now a broader marketing agency. We got, after about 8 years, we were bought by Publicis, the big holding company. And then out of the sky, McKinsey found me and asked me to build a digital marketing strategy practice for the firm, which I did. And I was there for 8 years, focusing on how not to execute digital marketing as much as what are the organization changes, technology changes. How do you change the whole operations to fund and focus on being digital first? A lot of questions about whether companies should be focusing on digital in a BU by BU perspective, or do you create central enterprise level capabilities to accelerate how a company can move forward? So it's a lot of things around structural change for larger companies. Then I got an opportunity to go client side and became chief marketing officer at Aetna. Mark Bertolini, the CEO at the time, was wanting to change Aetna from just being an insurer to being more of a health partner. The belief was if Aetna could get people to do healthier things, they're healthier. And Aetna can save money, and we can do a lot more to stop the cycle of escalating health costs. And so Aetna needed to create a brand, build its digital capabilities. It was also growing in the Medicare space So that was a lot of digital marketing to bring in, but then also what we called health behavior change marketing, building that up from the start. And it was a terrific run for 4 years working through to build their capabilities. We launched a new brand, created a customer experience capability. Then we got bought by CVS, things changed, and I left and became the portfolio kind of guy that I am now.
That's a fascinating journey. A couple of observations, and the reason I always ask guests about their journey is there is a common thread. So, for people that come in that have marketing backgrounds, such as yourself, there's a common thread about there's some musical interest or some creativity in there somewhere. It's fascinating to me. No scientific study here, but just an observation of talking to hundreds of different guests. It's like in customer service, people that have that background, almost always their family was in retail, or there was some linkage there that said, I was taught this is the way you delivered customer service from my father or from my family being in business. And it's really fascinating to me. One of the things you talked about with digitization and structure is in customer experience, we talk a lot about the need to align customer experience to the strategy, that it can't sit out here by itself. It has to have CEO buy-in. It has to be aligned to the business strategy, et cetera. What do you find are some of the challenges that you've encountered in getting that alignment, whether it's in the digital space or in customer experience or customer strategy, as we're going to talk about your book in a minute? Are there challenges that you've encountered that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, there's often a trade-off between what people fear are added costs of investing in customer experience and aspects of customer service. They're worried, in healthcare, for example, how far can you go to rectify things if it's not necessarily clear that there was a mistake? Is it just the customer's perception? And there's just always this trade-off between cost and value. But the reality is, from a brand perspective, customer experience is the product. For more and more products that are out there, the core product is getting more commoditized. Digital capabilities, automation enable lots of different companies to offer similar services at their core, especially in service-based businesses. And so the experience around it is what makes a difference. It's what people realize is the value that they're getting. So that's where I find in a lot of executive suites, we try to raise the perception that customer experience is what we sell. It is the brand. And I was lucky with Mark Bertolini, being the CEO at Aetna. He firmly believed that and wanted to distinguish it. And so we got ahead in building digital capabilities and a very advanced app, for example, to be able to manage all aspects of not only your insurance, but even things like getting appointments to see your doctor and things like that. So we really had an ethos at the executive team level that customer experience was going to be something that everybody, not just marketing, not just customer service, was going to focus on, but as a group, it was part of our strategy. And so we made sure we had strategy meetings. Well, we had executive leadership meetings every month, and every other one, customer experience was on the table as a core thing we would discuss. Where were we? What were the trade-offs we were facing, the obstacles? How do we work together as a team to advance the ball?
Mm-hmm. That collaboration is so important. In the customer experience profession right now, there's a whole lot of discussion around the ROI of CX and how do you prove the ROI and how do you prove it to an executive team and so forth. But the way, and that's important, but the way you're describing it seems to me much more effective in making sure that it is tied to the brand. I've heard it stated that um, the brand is the promise and customer experience is the promise kept. And so that I mean,
Yeah.
you're just talking exactly like that, and it's encouraging. I know for those of us that ROIs are important, but it's also that linkage that you have across the organization that everybody believes in it and is committed to it?
Yeah, when you look at it, what's the ROI from CX? That makes it sound very incremental and tactical
Mhm.
versus saying CX is how you compete. It is your differentiation. It's ties together product, operations, marketing, even sales is part of the customer experience. How you sell, how you inform people in the first place of what it is you're selling and how you're meeting their needs. I mean, all
Mhm.
of that, it's not an incremental tactic. It's your competitive advantage.
No question. I'm going to spread the word and quote you frequently on what you just said, David, because I think you are spot on. Well, thanks for that background information. I want to get to your book because I think this is going to continue our interesting discussion that we're having. But David wrote a book, Personalized Customer Strategy in the Age of AI. And David, I've got to ask, what brought you to write this book? Why this book? Why now?
Sure, it actually goes way back, and I'm going to reveal my age here. In 1989, before the internet became a thing, I was a young consultant at BCG out of business school and focused on marketing, and three clients in a row had come to us saying they were starting to collect customer information. They felt it could be an asset that they can do something with, but they weren't quite sure what that was. Was it around targeting marketing, creating loyalty programs, using it for customer service? And we found opportunities, and I started thinking, this is going to be bigger. We are just beginning this. I got some investment dollars from BCG to look more deeply into it and came up with what we called segment of one marketing
Hmm.
as an area of focus. I wrote an article. It got picked up widely. I was invited to speak at forums. Clients became much more interested in it, and it snowballed and really became the engine of my career. And of
Mhm.
course, then the internet started coming out. I became part of a team that started BCG's e-commerce practice. And over time, more and more capabilities were becoming available. At Digitas, when I went there, I was much more at the rock face of actually building experiences, the marketing that was going out the door, the websites. And then, as I said at McKinsey, about the broader organizational change. So I've been on this journey of always helping companies figure out how to get the value. The interesting thing is the switch from marketing. So it started as much more focused on marketing, but now, with more and more of the capabilities available from AI, it's broader than marketing. It is coming back to what we were just talking about, Bob. It's about the customer experience and using customer data to create experiences and value that customers realize are worthwhile because of the way you're using their data. Think about brands you're using more and more, whether it's Spotify, Uber, Netflix, a lot of the digitally native brands, the reason they're so attractive is because you see the value as they learn more about you, the experience gets more tailored. That's now
Mhm.
extending in more and more examples to non-native digital companies who are using this to change the way they work with you. And so it's becoming a way companies are increasingly going to compete. And so it seemed like the right time for a book for two reasons. One, because this was broader than marketing. It's about where competitive strategy is going, especially in services. Things less so in packaged goods, more so in services, in B2B. That's where it's really advancing rapidly. Also, because with AI capabilities, we felt we needed to demystify what's going on with AI. There's a lot of talk about generative AI, and there's a ton going on there. But there's also other aspects of AI that have been around for a while that companies are using, that I used when I was CMO at Aetna, And so I wanted to make sure in writing this book, and I wrote it together with Mark Abraham, who runs the marketing practice at BCG. Through both of our examples, we just saw so many different ways of using AI. We felt we needed to broaden people's perspective on the art of the possible.
Hmm. That's, yeah, the art of the possible is really key there. And I want to follow up on something you said that maybe not all of our listeners might be familiar with, the native digital and the non-native. Can you go, and I'm thinking you're talking about a company that builds itself digitally from the beginning as opposed to one trying to convert to be more digital. Am I even close to that
Yes,
definition?
yes, yes.
Okay,
And let me give you an example of a non-native digital company
great.
that we cite in the book. So Cisco, the food delivery Cisco, there's also the technology
The tech.
company Cisco, who also is an example in the book, actually. We have both of them. But Cisco, the food delivery company, has an app. They deliver food for restaurants, eating establishments all over the country, thousands of different eating establishments. And you are a purchasing manager or you just run a restaurant, you open the Cisco app in 300 milliseconds. That app knows who you are, your restaurant, your menu, the price points, what
Mhm.
you've ordered and your consumption patterns, whether you tend to buy in bulk on discount or not. They also know the warehouses near you, what they have in stock, what they're trying to move because it's food and it's perishable. And so they've created both the engine to make what you see on that screen personalized and design the componentry of the app to be able to mix and match modules so that you get a personalized interface when you open that app. And so that's an experience. It's, yes, it's marketing, yes, it's sales, but it's an experience. And having talked to people who use that app, it makes things so much easier for them. It
Mhm.
starts building a moat for Cisco because they get more data as they see what you do by, they try different things in terms of showing you things. They see what your behavior is, they get smarter, and it gets more and more granular and tailored over time. So
Mhm.
that's an example of a non-native company. And there are others like them who are offering that kind of tailored experience that gets better over time.
Mhm.
And, and that's a key to personalization because the way we define personalization, it's not just putting your name on a message. It's not just following up and retargeting you after you look at a pair of shoes. It's about tailoring experiences at scale based on customer information and making those experiences better as you learn more and more over time.
Mhm. And based on your earlier comments too, David, the you talked about value, and I'm just sitting here thinking if I'm a customer of Cisco and I have all that information available to me instantaneously to help me run my business, that's a value add. It's also harder for me to go to a competitor because I'm saying I can hear the client saying, "But Cisco knows me, right?"
Right.
And I couldn't possibly leave Cisco. I mean, I can remember working for a couple of different companies where we really strove for that value add because it gave the hook. We always call it the hook. It would be it's too difficult to switch. They know too much about me. They're my partner. They're not my client, and that really goes to in your book you talk about the five promises of personalization, and one of those, although it's the second one, was know me. And what really excited me about these is for years I've talked about know me, help me, value me. Know your customers, help them when they need help, and then tell them how much you value them. And you expand this in a way. I'm sure, David, I'm gonna find myself quoting your book repeatedly in my academic teaching. But do you want to tell a little bit more about those five promises to
Yeah,
give a
sure.
kind of an insight into the book?
Yeah, sure. So so essentially what we're saying is when you're offering personalized experiences, you are implicitly making five promises to your customers. So the first is to empower them. And that's the fundamental thing. Enable them to do something that was not as easy to do before. So solve a challenge that they have, or bring them joy in helping them discover new things that they hadn't thought of before. So, in order to empower them, as you said, Bob, you need to know them. You need to have data. And that data should be gotten in ways that are not creepy. And whenever I give speeches, people always follow up and ask, oh, but what about the trust factor and the creepy factor?
Oh,
But every
yes.
example I give is not creepy. It's where people understand that somebody should be collecting this kind of data on them and using it for their benefit. So, and sometimes it's an issue of just asking people. So let me just give a quick example here. I recently moved, and when I moved, Home Depot started bombarding the hell out of me. All kinds of messages, messages, messages. And I was ready to unsubscribe because it was too much. But then they asked me, what's my next project? So, bathroom renovation.
Mm.
Then things got way more tailored. And gradually they see which things I was looking at, and it got more and more tailored over time. And I understood that. And it started with them just asking me, getting zero party data. And this way they get to know me. And so we talk about examples of know me in the book and ways you can use AI to capture more information. For example, when you're calling into a call center, that can be digitized as information to
Mhm.
learn about me. And there's also AI capabilities that allow you to integrate data, because AI can write code, and there are tools now using AI to help you integrate data from around the company so that I can know how Bob uses my products. I know how Bob pays his bills, what
Mhm.
marketing Bob looks at, whether Bob calls into customer service. You can bring that data together more readily. So empower me, know me. The third is show me, give me something visual like the Cisco app that helps me see for myself something tailored that I can understand. Reach me. So make sure that when you're reaching out to me, it's not bombarding me, but doing so in an orchestrated manner. And one of the fears with AI is that we're going to have all kinds of spam, because you can create all this content and you're going to just hit people. And there are going to be companies that do that. And it's a
Mhm.
tragedy of the commons, because I definitely think, and I've seen data when I was chief marketing officer at Aetna, the more we sent messages to people, the more they tuned out. And so we had to be much more precise and use AI tools to really figure out what's the right thing to send, when's the right time to send it. So
Mhm.
we have empower me, know me, reach me, show me, and then the last is delight me. As you test and learn, as you get more data from somebody, making the experience better, building that moat, the switching costs, as you were talking about, Bob, because the
Mhm.
customer knows that they've given you this information, and that's creating a more and more tailored experience.
Mhm. Wow, those are, I think those really nail the whole personalization. So, a couple of questions, probably geared more towards your marketing background, David, and that is, why do companies think that bombarding people with 2 and 3 messages a day is effective? And I always went back to my direct marketing days, and my wife would say, "Why do they have to send us 3 emails a day?" And I'd say, "Well, they must have figured out through testing that it works, that we buy when we get bombarded." But this is so much more of an effective way to do it, what you're outlining. Why do you think companies pursue that?
I think there's two reasons from what I've seen. One is because there's not a single point that's sending the messages. In retailers, for
Uh,
example, it could be there are different category managers in charge of different areas of merchandise who all have their lists. And each one, even though they're the same brand of retailer, they're all, so at a bank, different lines of business, all going after the same high value customers. I saw this at Aetna. We had different divisions all hitting the same customers, but it's the same brand name. And so each line of business sets their own priorities, and generally they tend to go after the similarly high value customers because the triggers and the characteristics are going to be the same. So that's one where it's
Mm-hmm.
not orchestrated. And so that's one of the reasons why enterprise capabilities get set up to try to coordinate that. It's a bit more socialist within the company, actually, as opposed to completely free market and letting everybody go, because you're orchestrating on behalf of the whole. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing is just simply tactical. There's, they've not really measured what happens if you pull back. They send more and more, they're getting responses, but they haven't really held out and tested whether there's actually a smarter way of doing this. And
Mm-hmm.
so they haven't really tested the experience of less being more. And so they just send more and they get
Right.
response rates that are adequate. But what I'm also seeing in more and more companies is unsubscribe rates and tune out rates have been going up. And clients of mine have seen that. We did a survey. One of the things for the book we did, BCG does a big annual survey of consumer attitudes towards data about them being used. It's a
Mm-hmm.
global survey. And what's interesting, over time, customers are more and more comfortable with companies using information about them to help them. 70% of customers in the United States say they are comfortable and do more business with companies who use information about them. But flipping that around, 75% of customers say they've stopped doing business with companies who they felt were not using their customer information appropriately. And that's
Mm-hmm.
gone up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely costs to bombardment.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, those figures are really intriguing to say the least. Um, Before we started this podcast to my listeners, I told David there's enough here for us to talk 4 hours, but um, our time has gone by quickly. We're talking to David Edelman, author of Personalized Customer Strategy in the Age of AI. David, two final questions before I let you go. One is, what are companies doing with all this data? How are they harnessing that data? Is AI the ticket that gives them the ability to harness that data? Because we hear a lot about companies collecting the data. We hear less about them, how they're using it. You've given some great examples of how companies are using it, but I'm sure there's a vast number of them that are collecting it but not using it.
Yeah, I think the key is thinking about the customer first. So one of the challenges with a lot of AI projects is companies seeing a cool tool or saying, we got to start collecting data, but not really thinking through what they're going to use it for. And the beauty of AI is that it can take lots of different pools of data, bring it together, analyze it, find patterns, find triggers, find anomalies, find clusters if you bring it together. But you have to have a sense of what's the goal? What are you pointing it towards? What are you trying to accomplish, ideally for customers? Now, it could be to lower your own costs, and it could be you're using AI to manage your supply chain, for example. And that's a perfectly good use. It's not what we focus on in the book, but that's another definitely appropriate goal.
Mhm.
But from where we're talking about for personalization, what's the empowerment? What are you trying to enable people to do? You know, at Aetna, one of the things was we wanted to help people do behaviors that made them healthier. So we would go after people who we felt had higher risk of not good things happening to them and make them aware of actions they could take easily and enable them to do things that would make them healthier.
Mhm.
And we pointed all of our information processing capabilities towards trying to make that happen. Um, I talked about Cisco. They want to make it easier for people to make decisions about buying that would enable them to buy more efficiently and advance the value proposition of their restaurants. So, what is it that you're taking the customer perspective? The companies that are having the most success, it starts at the top, the senior executive team saying, we want to compete based on customer value. And then the AI and the data falls from that.
Yeah.
So that's really the pivot in thinking instead of from the bottom up, just going after everything, because there's too much to go after. There's tons of things you could spend money on, but think about the goal of what you want to enable.
Mm-hmm. It's outstanding. It's the what I call the don't boil the ocean syndrome.
Yeah.
Go after what you can handle. A final question, David. Where do we go from here? What's your look in your crystal ball and tell us where we're headed?
Yeah. So the most fun chapter in the book was one that does look ahead. And
Mm-hmm.
there's two things that I think are going to happen going ahead. More and more companies are going to be thinking about pull instead of push. So, and what I mean by that is you going to Marriott and saying to Marriott, I want to go to Spain with my two teenage kids for 10 days, want to go to 3 or 4 different places, focus on eating experiences. Here's my budget, but I want to use as many Bonvoy points as possible. Give me 3 options of itineraries and their cost, and let me know if you can coordinate that. And so you're going to see that. Take Home Depot. Here's a picture of my current bathroom. You figure out the dimensions. Here's some Pinterest examples of styles that I like. Here's my budget. Give me 3 options of bathroom remodeling, and you coordinate making that happen. So we're going to see, and we talk about agentic AI, so agents helping to figure out
Oh,
how to make certain things happen and then coordinating those actions on your behalf with your permission. So we're going to see more of that where companies are competing as destinations to give you solutions. So ultimately, personalization is about helping you solve something, getting a solution. So that's one part, but there's an important second part. In all of those examples I cited, the companies, Marriott, Home Depot, can't do it themselves. They have to have an ecosystem of other companies who are helping them provide the personalized solution. I mentioned earlier that AI can actually help you integrate data. When I said that quickly in the know me section, but because AI can do that, it can actually enable information to be passed across parties more easily. It can actually write code to control the flow of information, who sees what, have an audit trail of information being moved. And so it enables companies to coordinate ecosystems to solve personalized problems or solutions and giving people enablement that they just couldn't do before. So I think we're going to see more personalized solutions being offered and even more competition to be the destination for that. And I think we'll also see ecosystems evolving of companies working together to provide those solutions. And the leading brands are working on this. We talk about
mhm.
this in the book, we cite examples, but this is second order implications of where we see this going.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I hope we do go in that direction because I think it is what, as consumers, we want, and
Mhm.
as consumers, tastes and requirements are changing. We're looking just for what you've described. So that's been excellent, David. This has been a fascinating conversation. I knew it would be. Um, the book available. I'll let you talk. I'm sure it's available on Amazon and all.
It's
all
available
around?
anywhere you buy books. It's in Kindle format, it's in audio format, it's in physical format. So yes, it's been out there, and I'm happy to say actually it debuted this week on USA Today's business bestseller list at number 4 in its first week out.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
That's great. Congratulations.
thank
And
you.
then you can also follow David on LinkedIn. He's got a great amount of content and information there for you as well. So, David, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Bob. It was a lot of fun.
And listeners, this has been another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. Please share this with your networks. And as always, join us for another fascinating episode of this podcast. Thank you now.